gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah. We gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer. Yeah, we gon' take this slow. We just gon' peel it back layer by layer.
All right, hello, and welcome to the midweek Slowcast. We don't even know what the games are going to be yet, but I am Slappy Davis, and I am joined by Opie Wrights.
Hi there, how's it going?
Oh, it's going real well. And despite Opie being in the league below me, his analysis will be fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say. I'm sorry, I should not start it off and make this into a trash talk thing. I really legitimately think Opie is a great mind for this, and I'm super glad you had the time to join me.
Of course.
All right, so for those who have never seen a Slowcast before, we are specifically going to take this slow and peel it back layer by layer. We are going to watch the game. We might pause through the first time through, but we are going to be going back and forth in the game many different times. Either one of us is going to jump in and start on a tangent. There's going to be a ton of opinions in here, but really the point is that there are so many times during casting we don't have enough time to go back and really look at the play and start theorizing about alternative ways the game could have played out because we had to jump on to the next game. So don't expect too many games to get cast. It might be like 3 max. Sometimes we have spent half an hour or so on a single venue. The trademark thing is the just one more thing, which is going to show up on screen. That is such a classic thing for slow casting in general. So I guess before we get started, Opie, have you ever gotten really to see a slow cast before? You might have actually even you did a fast cast, actually. You did the opposite. That's right.
Yes. Did a fast cast on the Corvu charity Spyathon. And that is a bit more in tune with what my spy style is like. But I think that taking it slow and some deep analysis is really interesting, and especially in very concrete scenarios like this. You can talk about theory all you want, and I've written multiple articles about theory, but when you actually get down to brass tacks and see a game and analyze that, that's where you can really learn some stuff.
Great. Well, apparently I'm staticky. This almost always happens because of the key that I use to do my press to talk. So I'm basically just going to turn that off and put it on threshold and see if that fixes it, because I don't want my voice to be any more annoying than it has to be. So give me 1 second.
I did have a little bit of static earlier, but you seem mostly fine to me.
Because I put it on here. So Opie, you just talked to yourself, it sounded like, because
Did I
I
just
put
talk to myself for a
You
while?
did.
Is that what?
Yes. So
Oh,
I need to put this on threshold. I forgot that I have the hotkey set up on both things. So now I can be heard. But I want to actually change the threshold real quick if I can. Screw it. You'll be catching all my background noises, and it should be mostly fine because there'll be the background noise in general. I might put a little bit of my classic SpyParty background music on, just because I hate hearing background noise on other casters. So there might be a very light techno beat in the background, but it should be good. My voice is low, people are saying, so let me move the mic closer and boost myself
turn
a little
yourself
bit.
up, Slappy.
Turn myself up. Okay.
People want to hear that beautiful voice of yours.
Yes, and speaking of that beautiful voice, every once in a while I might wince because I hurt my shoulder, but it's not because of anything Opie said or anything that the spy is doing in game.
I mean, you can wince it with things I say. It's fair.
Okay. All right, so before we get in, we have quite a few games, so is there anything you want to jump to? I know you want to do Ballroom. We'll do Ballroom second. So before we do Ballroom, what are you thinking about jumping into first?
Well, we've got a couple of Redwoods games, and being the newest venue, there's a lot to talk about there, I think. I know you did the Redwood Slowcast already on that one. We also have some games that are, like, very long. I see multiple games with, like, 5 minutes, over 5 minutes, over 4 minutes, so the games like those tend to have a lot of decision points that make them that long, so we can do one of those as well.
That sounds good to me. I actually need to turn casting mode off. So, something that's going to be weird about this is we're not going to actually care so much about the suspense of a given game and what happens with it. That is for the normal cast, and we do an awesome job of keeping that tension in there for the normal casts. So, you might see the results of games. I'm going to try to hide the screen when I'm transitioning between them, but I'm actually not going to take that much care because the result is not the point, it is the process. So I like what you started with. Let's just go with a really long one. Do you want to just do the longest one, the one on library, 508?
Yeah, 508. I see it. Sure. Sped Monkey versus Beanie.
Okay. All right. Let me load into the actual game. Also, let's see. That's Beanie. I don't have Beanie in this thing. I also apologize, Kletos, because I actually have not updated my caster tools, so there are going to be some old assets, even though Kletos does such a good job of keeping us up to date and giving us new caster tools. I am shameful and using last season's, so sorry about that. Even though last seasons are still very beautiful, they're just going to be a little bit out of date, and Kletos has put an effort to making them even better. So shout out to Kletos for these wonderful casting tools. And let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1, go. And feel free to jump in at any point, Opie, and just, if you see something you already want to talk about, All right, so actually, I'm going to stop right here. Let's pause. Let's talk about time ads on library. First of all, any general inclination about time adding right from the get-go on library?
Well, I think time adding in any time of chaos scenario is one of the more common times time add, but it's also one of the times that snipers specifically aren't looking for it because there's just a lot to do in the first few seconds of the game. You know, memorize statues, look for where the ambassador is, cover time of chaos bugs. There's just a lot to be looking at, and so it's a little bit harder to catch those time ads. I will note that if they do catch it after the fact, there's usually a lot of information that can be gained because of what they actually were watching. They can go back and think, okay, these people I saw were definitely at statues, right, and that kind of thing. So there is, even if you don't catch it in the moment, there's still information. But these things can be kind of hard to catch as the sniper, and honestly, it's just good to have that extra 45 seconds.
Yeah. So the other thing I kind of want to talk about is, so I agree with all of that. What do you do as sniper if you don't catch who did the time ad? Because one of the things about library is it's really hard to see. If you catch it, let's say 5 to 10 seconds late, there's basically no way you can track back to who it was unless you remember exactly who was at at Windows.
Unless you're Crazy Kaylee and remember everyone at Windows all the time.
Right, exactly. So let's say that you are sniping on library, you didn't catch the time ad. Basically, everybody that could have time added is already away from Windows or could have cycled through this, so there's no real information there. Does that change your gameplay at all, or are you going to do your best to ignore it as sniper?
In my personal sniper play, I tend to just ignore that fact. Like, if there's been a time ad, I can't get any information out of it. I just play my normal sniper. It's not worth messing up your normal routine, your flow in the sniper side, because the sniper side to me is very much about having a routine, having that repetition, and like knowing exactly what you're going to be doing at any given point to win the game. You want to be controlling the game. You want to know how it's going to play out before you even step into the game, which is like completely different from the spy side, right? The spy side is very fluid. You've got to adjust to scenarios that's happening in game, but on sniper, you want to just have that flow and routine and get it locked down. So if you can ignore it, then you should, because it's not a mission. They haven't done a mission. There's just an extra 45 seconds on the clock, and that's something you have to account for, but you shouldn't let yourself get thrown off by it.
Yeah, agreed. And especially because, honestly, a lot of the times if I time ad as spy early on library, it's just more time for me to waste, honestly. And so I know that I'm not going to be using it all that much as spy. There's plenty of time on library. So generally speaking, so now switching back to the spy side, theoretically 45 seconds gives you a few things. It gives you a little bit more time to get some flirts in without rushing it, although honestly not a lot of snipers look for that level of detail on library. It gives you a little bit more time for fingerprints to cook, a little bit more time for other suspects to just kind of get pooled up through the aggregation of going to inspects and whatnot. But yeah, so it is one of, I would say, I don't know if you agree with this, one of the less consequential maps to get an early timeout on. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it is a very valid opener. And actually, I'm going to use that point to transition into another thing about openers on library. So if you can't get the Time of Chaos bug, time ads are something that everybody has access to early on. There's not a lot of other things you can do really early on without taking a lot of risk, but there is always a pad nearby. So no matter where you happen to spawn as spy on library, time adding is a viable plan. Now, obviously, Sped Monkey happened to be near the time ad spot right when we jumped in, so it's kind of like doubly effective, where we might not be looking at them and really considering the time ad spot to be all of that threatening. But just a consideration where if you're the kind of player that likes to have an immediate first thing that you do during the time of chaos, it's always available. Although, I don't know if you would agree with this, not all that consequential in library versus other maps.
Well, I think the main point of how you use this is, one, if the sniper you're playing against doesn't highlight for statues, early side statues, you can pick up an early side statues. If they don't highlight for it, and you wait like the entire game before going back to statues, you have all this extra time. They might not remember this is your second statue visit. Obviously, there are a lot of players who do highlight for statues, so this won't always be applicable. And there's also the ability to get an early fingerprint and let that get it early and then let that cook on you. So like they just forget that you have that first fingerprint even when you go for your second later in the game. So those really early half soft tells just gain value, I think, the more time you have on the venue, no matter what venue it's on.
Very good. Also, thank you, chat, for talking about the screen ratio. I got a new monitor and I forgot to change my my proportions on here. So thank you for calling that out. That was not intentionally me trying to hide stuff. That is just bad prep. All right. So let's go ahead and jump back into the game. 3, 2, 1, playing it. And so it looks like we are going to... Okay, so as we approach here, we might go for a bug.
Well, I do want to talk about that bug actually a little bit because
let's do it.
If we just pause for a second, because as many people might know, I am a big fan of bugs. Bugs, I mean, they're just the best mission in the game, personally. They are not assumed to have happened like flirt, right? The sniper doesn't get to know when they happen like contact, and if you do it well, there's no trace. You're not going to get credited, and you just have that mission done. It becomes a 4 of 7 venue without the sniper knowing. And so bug's very strong in a lot of aspects. So this bug that we walked by the ambassador here, and I am sort of glad we didn't take it. It's because like having that arm go out, maybe it might work on another character, but we're playing Twin. Twin's pretty speedy. So when you trigger that bug, the animation's always going to take a certain amount of time, and if you were a slow character, maybe that entire time would be covered by the time you were behind Taft. But if you trigger it as Twin, there's going to be time before and after where your arm is pretty clearly visible as being out, or at least not in your arm swing animation. So it's pretty visible. The one thing you can do here, if you want to rewind a little bit to the path by the ambassador, is we came in at a pretty good angle to try to attempt a wrong arm bug. In fact, we get bounced by Toby, so we have a really natural way to trigger this bug here. You'll see when we did bounce off Toby, our left side of our torso is actually closer to the ambassador here, which allows, if we triggered it right then, it would be a wrong arm bug away from the sniper, which would be very, very effective.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, obviously Sniper was looking kind of at it, so we probably were just a little bit nervous to do it. And obviously there's the, I believe this is intentional on SpyParty's part, to turn their body after they bumped into the ambassador to show that there's no arms on either side poking out, to make it more innocent. I don't know if you like that.
Well, it really depends on who you're playing. A lot of players are not going to punish you for like making it obvious that you're not bugging, even though AIs won't do that for the sniper. You know, AIs won't be like, oh, I'm not touching the ambassadors, but spies like to do that a lot because they don't want to get credited with a bug they don't have. There are, however, snipers who will maybe like give you props as like maybe be more AI like just for walking by the ambassador and not bugging, but that's really an exercise of trust in your sniper.
Indeed, and I like the exercise of trust. So there's a lot of talk in various different casts that I've seen and definitely participated in, where you have to know how much to trust your sniper, especially in cases where you're trying to get a low light, depending on how non-suspicious you're being, but in a way where you're just grazing the very top line of suspicion, where you are trying to be 90% of the way to a suspicious action, but then not complete the last 10% of it, and that would be like with the turn and the not bugging, but then they have to be able to see that last 10% of that is non-suspicious. And so it's supposed to be this like kind of odd Yomi-ish thing, where it's like you're being so suspicious, but then you show that nothing happened, no threat occurred actually out of the suspicion, but you have to trust the sniper to actually catch that and actually reward you for it in some way. Otherwise, we could have just been like, if they didn't know, they could have just been credited with the bug anyways. We don't have progress and we're high lit, and that's awful.
this leads into something that like is not necessarily related to this game as much, but the I I think that your route one to winning as spy is completing missions and not like framing or trying to get someone else shot. Just because you don't know, it's much harder to know what the sniper does know than to try to manipulate them into not knowing what you're doing. So like, it's harder to know if the sniper has tracked an AI that's got fingerprints than getting away with fingerprints yourself. Getting away with fingerprints yourself, you have many options to like get that by the sniper, but you don't know if the AI who just casually has 2 fingerprints is actually being tracked by the sniper, right? It's a lot harder to like make that happen because you really have to be in their mind in a sense.
Agreed.
Anyway,
and I'm going to come back to that point later. I know that it's going to come up again because it's been a thing that's been brewing in my mind for a long time. So I'm going to tie it in at a later point. But I like that, and we will revisit that. So let's go ahead and pick up back at 5:10 right when we come into the conversation. And I actually accidentally played a little bit ahead. So there's another event really soon that we're going to get to talk about.
I also played a little bit ahead as well. So we can talk about it immediately. There is a banana split coming up.
There we go. Okay, so I am playing in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so right here we get a green test and we immediately banana split. We do actually wait for the correct timing on the animation. So I'm actually go back. I'm going to pause immediately. So Sped showing a little bit of confidence almost, or at least I guess worst case scenario, we get the white and we just start talking out of the middle point of our animation. But for some people that maybe don't know as much about etiquette, not only did Sped do a banana bread bail, he actually bailed in a really plausible way. He waited for the idle animation that you can leave during, and then he timed it a little bit beforehand, got a green, and actually left during that idle animation. So even if we were seen for the banana split, one of the big ways you can distinguish banana splits from normal just people leaving is a lot of the times you have to break animation because you didn't plan ahead on when you left. But Sped Monkey did leave during that. Again, we're going to bat back in that territory where it's like, how much credit are you giving to the sniper for noticing really small stuff like that? I just thought that was cool. I would not have noticed that playing at full speed. I don't know how you feel about that.
So the matching up the split with the idle animation is something that I just do very naturally a lot in my own spy because if I really don't like breaking etiquette if I don't have to. Obviously there are times where I'm just going to because that's the better play and those are my odds. But usually I much prefer to not break etiquette if I don't have to, so I go for those timings, right? So this is not something that is out of the blue for me. And I think the main issue with this split is like, because like he is off screen when he splits. It doesn't actually matter that he leaves with the idol. The main issue with the split is that the contact itself is not actually that good. And that is what makes it so much easier for Beanie to think, okay, that could have been a split. Because if the contact itself is very good, you're much more, I think, incentivized to low light someone for a split because you want to get that solid information out of the contact that you might not otherwise. Or same thing with fake contacts, because if a fake contact is very good, you're more incentivized to low light a conversation for not having real. Now the thing is about that, which is again not exactly part of this game itself, but but I guess this is the point of slow casting.
No, it is.
Interestingly enough, I find it really interesting that people want to take they want to take low lights more often on really good contacts for fake BBs, even though the spy, if it's a really good contact and the spy is in a fake conversation, they are much more likely to want to take that contact because the cost of them taking a fake and not getting that mission progress while giving the sniper information is a lot lower. They are incentivized to do a fake in a scenario where the real BB is very, very good. So I think it's actually a bit of a fallacy that you think, oh, I'm getting so little information out of this, I want to low light to get some of that information for the fake, right? So I think it's actually more of a fallacy than anything, as far as that goes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff I think, like playing around what contact is as a mission, I think that we only really scratch the the surface, as especially in intermediate play. A lot of people only really scratch the surface of like using contact information. Um, they'll take the lowlights, but and maybe sometimes they'll highlight for a real contact or lowlight for a fake. But outside of that, there's very little done to evaluate what the contact is like, and I think that's something that like it's an underdeveloped skill in the community as a whole.
Agreed. And actually, Monitors points out something interesting that, or Monators, it's Monators, right? I like, it's funny because he's been around for forever, and I actually still switch between Monitors and Monators. With the split that occurs, there is no real BB on the map, which is really interesting, because then that plays into some of the second level analysis that you're talking about, which is what was the point of that BB unless it was to split or unless it was to cover something. But Toby is taking Ambassador is taking a drink from Toby, so two things are essentially covered at once. Nobody's at the other set of statues, so really there's nothing to cover with that except for a split. Now, obviously, that's the kind of thing, the analysis that a sniper might just kind of like not really go into because they're worried about other things. But it's the kind of thing that reflexively, after you kind of like look around to see who possibly has contacted, you might be left with the thing of like, I don't see why there would have been anything else than a split during that, unless there was something like the double H in the other conversation circle left during a white BB or something. But other than that, if you like, I love thinking of these opportunities where if like a sniper could pause time, not really look at anything, but just think about what happened, they might be able to dive into a lot more information and a lot more analysis of what's going on, along lines of what you're saying about like that we leave information on the table when we look at Banana Bread, because there's so much more than just getting lowlights or not.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason we leave so much information on the table is that either the information has to be gathered before the contact ever even happens. You have to anticipate the contact and know like what the party looks like at before the moments in the moments leading up rather to the contact. There's a lot of information to be gathered there. Like, is someone moving into a double agent conversation? Where is each different SDA? Because what's really interesting is almost every sniper in the game considers each SDA to basically be the same, right? Every SDA is the same. It could be the double agent, but that's not the case. There are activities around which double agent and every different double agent that you can determine which is more likely to be the real contact for different characters, and there's just a lot of information to be gathered there. Obviously, it's very hard to do if you're not practiced at it, and it's very hard to fold into your sniper play, which is, I think, why most people don't really think about it very much. It's just a lot of information to be processing like that.
I agree, and I also agree that Banana Bread has so much analysis in it, and I bet we'll have more opportunities later to talk about Banana Bread, because they are one of the most direct and known trade-offs between the spy and sniper that take place. Everybody knows the rules of it. Both sides know what's going on. It's one of the, like, even as a caster, when a Banana Bread goes off, it's one of the few times where you really understand more than normal what's going on in the mind of the sniper and the spy simultaneously. There's more obviousness to it. The trade-offs are just much more clear. So I will jump into that later, because there's something other interesting about this Banana Bread. But we're also not even down to 5 minutes yet in our first 20 minutes of Slowcasting. But that's what Slowcasting's all about.
Yes,
so
exactly. I'm
going to pick up after the split. I'm going to go where we are, where we pick up the highlight at 4:53, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, and this is the thing I was talking about earlier. Getting the early side inspects on when you've time matted is good, except if the sniper you're playing against does these inspect highlights, right? Inspect highlights are a very meta thing in a lot of sense. A lot of players do it, and to me personally, I really dislike it, because the problem with inspect highlights for most players is that they conflate their highlights with suspicion, right? They'll start watching just someone who's been to a single side statue. They'll start watching them like tons, right? And even though they're not actually being that suspicious or that threatening, either one of them. So to use side and just rote statue highlights effectively, you really need to be able to decouple your suspicion from your highlights.
Yeah, agreed. You have to be able to keep it clean. So, I mean, I don't know how many other snipers do stuff like call out words about their suspicion. Like, one of the classic examples of this that's defining between the highlight usage and actual suspicion is actually from Hummus, back when he said about who was on his shit list or not. And it was a very clear line about, like, he was one of the first people that, in a weird way, really discussed openly his personal distinction between something that was actually threatening, which is what I personally track with my highlights, is just basically a analogy for threat or stand-in for threat, versus suspicion and the kind of people you're naturally drawn to the rest of the game. But it's a very good tip for anybody that uses statue highlights. Something you just come away with is, if you're going to do it, you have to make sure that you don't conflate it with other types of highlights. Otherwise, you're going to get a whole bunch of trouble, especially since one of the other benefits of inspect highlights is backtracking swaps even without watching them that closely. Because then if you have a bunch of their highlights polluting your pool, you actually have to remember who was at what statue and who actually visited.
Yeah, there are definitely benefits to the highlighting of statues. You don't have to remember who's been to statues. Like, that's the big draw. That is a very big memory offload that you can use on your highlights. So there's obviously benefit to it, and that's why so many people do it, I think, is that there's a very clear thing that is happening in your mind. You're like thinking, okay, I don't have to remember this anymore. I can just know who's been to statues based on who's bright. In fact, that said, though, well, I'm watching Beanie right now, and he's taking low. He's put people down to neutral light off of things. He's just highlight for a briefcase, so it's not just statue highlights. It looks like here.
Yeah, and as long as they're able to kind of like personally distinguish it, but you're right that inspect first highlights would be kind of weaker in this scenario, because you'd have to be able to bring them back down. So if you have a personal system, that works too. But also, I know that a lot of players, the other kind of like next step in the obvious use of inspect highlights is inspecting on completion, which is just a modest improvement on it, but it's a very important improvement on it if you can remember who was at statues the first time, because then you're actually having your eyes drawn to a smaller pool of candidates for threat than you would before.
Yeah, a smaller pool of candidates and a pool of candidates that actually have a mission done.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that I personally do. I'll highlight for completions, but that's not the only thing I'll highlight for. I'll highlight for pretty much any mission completion, whether suspected or like tracked. Fingerprint completion, bug suspicion. And like that's my personal take on it.
So I'm actually gonna pause here too and go ahead and finish your thought. Sure. But
and highlighting is very individual to everyone, right? And figuring out what works best for you. For some people, inspect highlights are just going to be what's best for them, right? And that's totally fine. And I think that is the main thing for me is just anyone who highlights for inspects, the single side statues or even center statues, right? Anyone who does that, they just need to be able to decouple that from their suspicion. That's all.
Yes. And so actually, as a consequence of the thing that you're talking about, at 121, basically, there's a little bit of a microcosm of the issue that could be presented with the highlights. And this is definitely something that happens to me. So I often will highlight for statues depending on the map, but it's something that is just kind of automatic for me. And then I'll catch myself in this position. So when I look at the sniper at right around like 121, 120, I just see a screen full of highlights. So I actually wanted to get some back and forth on, what do you do if you're sniping and you just have way too many highlights?
Yeah. So this is something we talk about a little bit when we're talking about camping behavioralism, but except with lowlights. Because when you have these behavioral lowlights, the value of those is diluted because of the fact that they're not like confirmed, right? You do have to be a little bit more careful about who you've got low lit. It's the same thing with highlights. If you've only got a couple highlights, their value is very high because you're really focusing on these people, assuming they're for something like suspicion or threat. So when you've got all of these highlights in this scenario, when it's for inspects, it's really hard to say what to do at that point because and I think it depends on the sniper. If you're a behavioralist, You can maybe try to go through your highlight list and figure out who is not really all that suspicious and give them a low light or a neutral light for it. Um, but it's very hard to deal with sometimes when just a bunch of AIs go to statues, go to statues, go to statues.
So okay, so I like that, and then like I'm gonna kind of just toss out a couple things because I often find myself in this situation, and I've been using different types of ways to address it, and I haven't really landed on one that I love. So there's two different ways that you can immediately kind of, or at least there's more than two, but if you're gonna go down the path of okay, I have too many highlights, I need to cut this amount down. There's one path that is immediately appealing to me, but it's definitely risky, which is all right. Everybody that's not highlight gets low lit. Exactly. Yeah. And then you return everybody that's highlight to neutral light. And it's obvious, it's very attractive because you're kind of like, this has been a super active party. Why wouldn't the spy participate in that activity at some level, right? Now, it's definitely a risky play on a map like Library where the snipers are expected to generally have a good chance of winning unless they make a big mistake. So on Library, I'm a little bit iffy on it because I feel like if I just play it out, I'll see something. But on other maps where it's like I'm feeling really behind, like let's say it's we might get to one of the Softail maps where you're like, okay, either the spy got really lucky and they're probably just going to win anyway because I'm going to shoot one of these people, or they're one of this pool of suspects. How do you feel about that solution as opposed to actually trying to knock your highlights down?
Well, on Softail venues, I've never really had the impetus to take soft low lights. I mean, I don't usually take soft low lights in on bigger venues either, but like the value of low lights to me is the fact that you are deciding whether that's on hard information or soft information, that you are not going to be watching this character as, very, very strongly anymore, right? Even if you're behavioralist, if you low light someone, you're probably not going to be watching them as much, even if you do watch them a little bit. And on Softail venues like High Rise or Terrace, or Pub, I guess Pub's not really a Softail venue on SCL settings right now, so like High Rise or Terrace, right? On these venues, there's just not very much value to me in low lighting people, right? It's just not there because 3 of X to me has always been the sniper can basically track everything really like fairly easily compared to other venues. However, that the trade-off is that AIs can complete, which means that you need to play a little bit more behaviorally and figure out who's the spy through that, right?
Yeah. So I often kind of I think about the very basic metaphor of signal and noise, but it gets confusing when I think of something that actually obscures your ability to see signals and something that is like stronger noise. Because for example, there's more false positives on a Softail map like High Rise, right? So it's just that your signal is polluted by the fact that there's going to be more plausible threatening suspects than there are on the other maps, where on other maps the trade-off is there's just more noise blocking your ability to really recognize who the true positives are of being the spy. And it's interesting because it affects so much about things like where you direct your precious attention during that time. Okay, so the next thing I want to kind of talk about right now is, let's just take it from the spy's point of view. We're at 120, we have 3 missions done, but they're among the easier ones, right? So we're one of many highlights. How do we actually feel about the rest of this game? So you're in this position, got a minute and a half done. You've had your veggies of getting your flirt done, your contact done, your inspect done. What do you like from this position?
So, well, we're standing in a spot where we have a very valid path to go to our arm bug, and that's like the first thing that sticks out to me because that's probably how I would go from here. I would go after Alice returns this briefcase. I'm currently at 121 still. After Alice returns this briefcase, go path near the ambassador. There's a very valid path where you can stick yourself in a position where you can do a wrong arm bug and get that mission done. At that point, you've got only one more mission left to do, and while that is still another mission, you've got a minute left for it. You can find it, especially with all the different highlights. Um, and I think the part of the point I'm trying to make here is that highlights, when there is an active party, the spy has a lot more leeway to do things.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got all of these highlights in the party right now. The sniper's less likely to be paying more attention to you, specifically you, because you've got that highlight.
Right. Yeah. I have more things to say about that, but I want to see what actually SpedMonkey does from here on out. So I'm going to start at 120 in 3, 2, 1, playing it. So like you said, we have a bug path available to us. Trey's going to go down in a few seconds. Oh, nope, but then Toby walks away, so there's no real Trey opportunity. Ambassador walks away, walks towards us, so there's not a real bug opportunity because there's no way that's going to stick unless we redirect. And we end up going to books. Now, books aren't as bad as they might be as a highlight when there's this many highlights going around. But this is one of those situations where late in the game, you have a highlight, you're not one of the only highlights, or you're not one of very few highlights, but it's where classically when we think about it, microfilm becomes much less attractive unless you do something sneaky like this, perhaps. Although we have our arm sticking out to the right side. What do you think?
Yeah, you could go for a microfilm here. I'm going to pause real quick. And I think that I personally, as spy, want to be looking at laser right now, because if you're looking at laser right now, and if you rewind a little bit, there's a little bit of looking at laser, and you can kind of see over at the other side of the statues, Irish is getting a lot of heat for being at these late middle statues, right? And I think that in the end, your better option than to try to do an animation micro. There's no way you do an animation microfilm here. I think there's just not enough time for that.
Right.
You have to go back to blue. You have to get out another book, and then you still have to do another mission on top of that. There's just 37 seconds left, and there's just not enough time.
Mm-hmm.
However, we do see Irish picking up a lot of heat for being at these statues. The sniper is very carefully watching this. So if we go over there and we slam the book, we slam the book and we go over to swap for her. It looks like we got called, and I think that with 2 missions still left on the board, holding a book, and being a highlight, framing Irish at this point is probably I just think it's honestly your best bet, especially given that she's not a low light, because the sniper would not be giving that much attention to a swap of someone who's a low light, right? That is some of I think that's actually some of the clearest some of the clearest sniper laser signaling that you can get in this game is when someone is watching for that late swap from an AI. You can really see that, right? It's very, very obvious when they're doing that, because they're leaning, they're like looking constantly at it, trying to get a glimpse. So that is some of the clearest signaling of the game of what the sniper is thinking about. Whereas in most other parts of the game, they're just looking around the party, they're tracking things, but they're not laser focused on one thing that you can very obviously see.
Yeah, and I really like what you have to say about that, because the other thing that you can see why there's so much attention specific in Irish is not watching Ambassador. And honestly, when Beanie looks away from Irish, it's almost just like a perfunctory, like just doing your job, like looking away but not even really probably even seeing what's going on, just getting a very, very broad sense of what's happening in the rest of the party, maybe just seeing where Ambassador actually even is, and then going right back to Irish just to make sure a swap didn't happen. And when you say slamming the book, you mean actually going into blue bookcase, cutting the animation short, and then immediately kind of just like going over it like for the call.
That is how AI will act if they're called for a swap with the book.
Gotcha. So that's a very attractive idea at that point. I mean, so we'd have to have started going over that way. It's probably not what we're going to do, but that is a very fascinating option, at least for us.
Yeah, and I will note it does require that the sniper does know that you got the book from blue, but I think it's honestly fairly likely. I think it's fairly easy to think, okay, they probably remember where I was because I've got these middle statues. Middle statues is a fairly threatening thing to do on library, because it can be pretty difficult to finish without middle statues as spy on library. There's 5 of 8 missions. You gotta do a lot of things. Otherwise, you're not gonna complete if you're gonna complete without them. And that is also another reason why inspect highlights are so popular, because spies very, very often like to go for inspects, and reward that. So it's a fair assumption to think, okay, they probably know that I've got this blue book, so if they see me slam it, they're not gonna shoot me immediately for the slam, right? Because you really do not want to be shot immediately for the slam before you can pull off your frame.
Yeah.
So like the sniper sees you slamming at blue, and if they know that it's from blue, they think, why are they slamming at blue? There's probably a different reason for this, because there's no reason for a spy necessarily to be slamming in the bookcase they got the book from.
Agreed. All right, well, let's see how the rest of this game actually does plan out. I'm going back to 40 seconds. And it looks like we've been staring down yellow bookcase, so I'm assuming that's what we're going to do. And playing in 3, 2, 1, go. So right now we're poking around. We noticed that Ambassador's gone away from us, so there's not... It looks like we might have also been hanging out near this this position, because maybe we could have snuck a bug in as well. But Ambassador's kind of far away at this point. We are going to put the book back. Going to do it kind of quickly, and it looks like we get shot for breaking for doing a little bit too quickly.
I think it's a combination of like the sniper sees that we're at this yellow bookcase. They're like, isn't that blue maybe? Like, because they see us open the book, and that's really what hurts us here, I think, in part. Because if you were already there when the sniper swings over with the book open, they don't necessarily know how long you've been there unless they're very on top of like their object permanence off screen. They know you've been in that conversation for a while, and they know how long they've been over on the other side of the venue. Which, by the way, is something very strong on library, to know like the positions of the party goers that you can't see. And know like what they could be doing in the time where you're not looking at them directly. That's something that's very, very important to cultivate on library, I think. But in this case, it doesn't really matter, because they just see us opening the book, they see us put it back immediately, and it's a combination of being... I think it's a combination of like knowing this book is from blue, but like just the confirmation of the etiquette makes it a lot easier.
Gotcha. All right, so Beanie's able to catch this. So besides the immediate kind of like advice of possibly going for a frame on Irish as being like the best from that position, your favored finish, let's say we got away with microfilm. Basically is crash bug or basically just rushing swap? Like, is that really it? Like, we just have to hope... Basically, do we have to basically rely on a sniper mistake at this point? Or is there something we could actually make happen here where we would have finished our 4th mission and tried for something in the last, like, 20 seconds? Or do we just basically have to go slam a swap?
Well, there are definitely a couple options, but you really don't want to leave yourself that much to do right at the end of the game. You want to, I think, just find a mission earlier than that. Like, I think I mentioned a couple times where we had bug opportunities, and, that's part of why bug is so good. It's because it gets done very quickly. You can fold it into a very natural, game as spy, I think. You don't have to necessarily do setups. Like, going back to, like, 224, the ambassador comes next to us, and there is timing here where we maybe could get a standing bug, although the sniper does watch us the entire way through, so it's not, super easy to get away with that kind of thing. But like, and I think also part of it is that doing hardtails when you're already a highlight can just be a lot more difficult, regardless of what the highlight is for.
Yeah. All right, well, I think we'll jump into another game. I guess the last thing I would say is if there hasn't been a swap or purloin occurring on library, how much do you think you can actually, like, basically one of the reasons why spies like to procrastinate overall, and definitely something that affects me a lot, is there's always the plausible chance that the sniper shoots someone wrong. But on the 5 of 8 maps, that's obviously much less reliable because of if you don't really put something else out there with a flag, the sniper has to be pretty sure that 5 of 6 missions were completed. if none of the other ones happened.
Right.
So at that point, you kind of have to make up your mind partway through the game if you're going to try to make something happen with a shot on the 5 of 8 maps, especially. You're gonna have to make a shot come off. You're gonna have to do something, unless you really think that the sniper is really, really anxious and might just shoot someone for going to middle statues. Or if you're gonna have to be a little bit bolder about getting something like the bug a little bit earlier. Now, obviously, even if we had the bug and we went into the bookcase, we still would have gotten shot. But we were gonna have another layer of issues after the bookcase that was gonna be tough. Like, even if we got away with that bookcase, the transfer, something else was gonna be happening.
Yeah, exactly. Tough. And it's just hard to see a world where you're going to be able to consistently get, AI shot on, especially library, against a good sniper, right? And I think that part of why there are so many slow spies in the game is that in intermediate play, you are rewarded fairly frequently for just slow playing and letting an AI get shot, right? But as you get to a higher and higher skill level, the snipers get better and better, you're just not going to get rewarded for that as much.
Right. All right. Well, I agree. And also, I want to say this should have been really apparent from the beginning, but in no way are we denigrating the play of any of these players. They are very graceful or I'm very grateful for them submitting their replays at all. And they did so with a lot of humility, so really appreciate that. This is definitely an area where we're like, hey, as spies or snipers, we all make mistakes, so we're trying to both reduce our liabilities on both sides of the laser. So really not in any way trying to disrupt any of your feelings about your spy play, but just trying to give some alternatives. So I'm going to turn it over to the next game. Do you want to do I would say let's try to do a Redwoods and a Ballroom game from here on out. Which one do you want to do first?
Well, I was promised Ballroom second.
Okay, all right. Well, there we go. Yeah, see, the thing is, he knows. This is a weird personal question. Do you have any siblings?
I do, yeah.
See, this is what I'm saying is like, okay, the reason I was guessing that very vaguely is as a sibling, sometimes when you're promised something, you make sure it happens early enough on so you're not the sibling that's left out. Because sometimes mom and dad promise you stuff, and then there's just a time crunch, and then you are the sibling, the short end of the stick. So yes, I appreciate you making sure that we turn to the promise from daddy early on. So let me go ahead and pull it up.
So which one would you like to be doing? There's two of them here. There's Death Tacticus versus Corvus Mallory and Death Tacticus versus the Forgotten. I'm fine with either one. They're both the same on the outside for me.
Yeah, I have I've done a slow cast for Corvus before, so let's get someone new in here. Unless the Forgotten One. Do we know how active is Forgotten One? Did the Forgotten One want us to give them advice as well? I honestly don't know, because I like giving advice to both sides if they really want it, and try not to give advice to people that are not soliciting it.
I don't know. Forgotten One's fairly active, as far as I'm aware.
Well, definitely doing Death Tacticus because it's the 2 Ballroom games. Let's jump in with Corvus then. Just because I know that they've previously given me permission to cast their games, and I've slow casted their spy game. So let's do that one. Although, as I did promise before, I will cast every game that's ever submitted to me. I'll cast at least one game of every player that submits it to me, because I love doing this.
Eventually.
Yes, because eventually I'll just get like a craving for it, and I love having something to lean back on. So I'll keep track of which ones we've done here. But obviously, you also want OP's analysis, and this is your one chance to get it. So here you go.
I'll never be on a slow cast again.
That's right. You're gonna get booted up. No, I've really enjoyed it. It's very fun. Also for the people that I know that you're also someone that would get into the spirit of just getting to just unleash all of your thoughts about SpyParty all at once. It's just cathartic, because casting
that's the only reason I write articles, don't you know?
Yeah, no, for real, because like casting, sometimes it's infuriating how little time you have to actually talk about how cool something is, because you have to move on to telling people what's going on in the game or something stupid like that. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is, let me change the bottom of the screen. Death Tacticus.
And while you're doing that, before we even start the game, I want to mention our character choice. On Ballroom, character choice is kind of subtly very important, I feel like. There's a lot to be said about picking shorter characters on Ballroom, I think. And it's a very subtle difference that most people don't really consider. Like, there's Smallman, of course, everyone's gonna think about Smallman, but someone like Queen or Teal, any of these shorter characters, I feel like almost get away with a lot more stuff on Ballroom sometimes, and you do have to play the taller characters sometimes just so you're not super predictable. But playing Salmon, I think, limits some of our options by and using the party as cover.
Indeed, yes. So I have really mixed feelings about Jackson as well, just because I like having Jackson in the party because he just gives such great cover, but I don't pick him nearly enough. And honestly, for me to actually sell Jackson as a viable person as a spy, I need to throw more people in there. All right, let's go ahead and get started. 3, 2, 1, playing it. Okay, so we kind of pathed towards Ambassador. It looks like we were considering going for a bug, but it's far too late by the time we get there, and we steer clear enough that I'm not on suspicion.
Yeah, something we could have done is we could have pathed out to a bit further out on the window pad to be able to have the opportunity of a just standing bug on the Ambassador from the window pad to the bookcase.
Gotcha, where you're saying stand more towards the inside of Ballroom just so you're actually a little bit closer.
Yes, exactly.
Ballroom... Sorry, I want to jump in on this one. I'm actually going to pause real quick. This is going to be a real short conversation. Whenever I see this, either if I'm spy or I'm sniping, it always feels worse than it actually is. What do you think about when you see somebody that's standing almost in front of someone in a CC? I know that it feels suspicious, but it's not super suspicious because actually AI will do it, but I can never shake the feeling of looking like a spy or feeling like a spy if I'm kind of behind someone in a conversation circle.
See, I actually like being behind people a lot. Because like there is a very deceptive out of sight, out of mind element to SpyParty. And you get that kind of obvious part of it with Smallman. Like if you can't see him, he's not there, right? But that's why he's so suspicious. That's why you gotta look for him so much. But on like skinnier characters or shorter characters, those characters, if you just kind of like situate yourself a little bit behind someone, where you're just not as visible from the angles the sniper's usually going to take, that is very subtly quite effective in making the sniper think less about you. So I think it actually is fairly spy-like.
Gotcha.
But like obviously AIs will just do it. Sometimes it's not. I think AIs won't do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's no tell, right? It's just a thing that spies have incentive to do.
Yeah, I just wanted to derail it real quick because it's just always something that I see it and I try to make myself not think about it because I've never have landed on a reliable pattern of if it's spy or not. It just has been both so many times that I see it, I can't help but think about it, but I need to just cast it out of my mind. All right, jumping back in at 2:53, playing in 3, 2, 1. All right, so we get our first flirt in.
Yeah, first flirt, very standard opening, right? This is the whole thing. Like, spies like to pace out that flirt. They want to get the early flirt so they can finish it up before the end of the game. They don't want to have like 0% flirt with a minute left to go. That is very, very clearly a good rationale for doing it. That means if the sniper wants to, there is some good information to be gained for like highlighting for early flirts like that. Depending on if the player you're playing against does do those early flirts fairly frequently, and it's even just a generally good rule because a lot of spies do it. And now we're picking up a fingerprint off the green books, which does I do like this. I do like picking up an early fingerprint off the non-obvious spot. Even if the sniper does notice it, you have time to let that sink into the back of their mind, right? As long as you're not being consistently suspicious, they might be able to forget about it. It's all about playing with the sniper's memory and attention, right?
Right. Indeed, and actually, Ambassador is going to go refresh that fingerprint again at green bookcase, which might be a discussion all of its own, is getting a fingerprint off the same thing twice. Okay, so let's talk about two different things. So I'm going to pause right here because we're going to talk about this purloin coming up. But how do you feel about that in general, of going to the, if Ambassador just through random chance goes to the same place twice, is that bad because they might stick out in the sniper's memory as like, oh, that's weird, and they just happen to naturally notice people that go there more often? Or is it just so like weird and counterintuitive that it actually is useful for the spy to do stuff like that?
Well, I think that it's not. To me, as a sniper, it's not really weird or counterintuitive. It's just something that you've got to remember. You tracking fingerprints, right? The good thing about going back to the same spot for a fingerprint is that, especially if it's like a bookshelf, right? You're going back to that same bookshelf. That's, other than the fingerprint, that is not suspicious at all, right? So going back there again, it's definitely not mission progress. Even if you got the one micro from the first time, you can't do it the second time at the same bookshelf. And so it's very much about, does the sniper remember this fingerprint? And if they don't, then suddenly you're getting credit for doing something that's not very suspicious.
Right.
The issue is, with bookshelf prints in particular, is that they don't really sit for very long, especially not after recent changes, not so recent anymore, but changes where both taking out and putting a backup book from AIs will smudge the print. So just one visitor can get rid of a print entirely.
Yeah. So it's a little bit harder to take in and try to get it as quick as you can. And I have definitely, like, you say still that it's like it's an old change at this point. Like, I want to say in like at least 30% of my games, I forget about it, and I keep in my head a print being on a object or on a bookcase way longer than I should, because I keep forgetting about the put back.
It's something I've adjusted to a lot, but like pretty significantly by now. Like at this point, I know like how to count the prints, right, as sniper.
Yeah,
it's just something that I think that maybe Slappy, you need to play a few more games.
Yeah, no kidding.
to get that ingrained in. But
hey man, I'm doing fingerprint more. I'm adjusting to that added mission from a few years ago. I'm acknowledging it as an existing mission. I more than quadrupled, I believe, my spy ended with fingerprint games in this season already, from probably the aggregate of every other season in my entire career.
Yeah. Well, so I want to talk a little bit about this moment right here that we just paused on, which is we've just done a white contact and then into a green purloin. So there are a few issues, I think, with doing a purloin, even if it's green, right after this contact. And one of the issues is that Toby has been standing behind us for quite a while. We started this white contact, with him already behind us. So when you so the idea here is to get the green on the contact, so it's not very suspicious. But it's always that thing. It's a very classically spy thing to be talking during the contact while Toby's standing behind you, and you're very conspicuously not doing anything with him. And that's very classically something that snipers like to assign suspicion for. And so even if you're not necessarily assigning suspicion for it as the sniper, it's just noticeable. It's just something that's noticeable. And if that thing is noticeable, you're gonna see this reject, and you're gonna know, okay, well, this person's in a reject chain. So when you decide to go for this green purloin at this moment, I personally think that you need to rush down the last few missions, right? You've got your contact, you've got a purloin pending, you've got one more flirt left to do, and you do have opportunities to get fingerprints off of both briefcase and off of green bookshelf, depending on which one you want to do. So you can finish missions very quickly here, right? If you finish those missions really, really nice and quick, then the sniper may be really on to you, but you need to not give them enough time to evaluate, okay, well, I've caught this purloin mostly, it's pretty much down to like 2 or 3 people, and now you're stuck, right? You want to do these things and you want to put them on a timer, because you've just done something that's going to be very, very standing out in the sniper's mind. Like, that is something I do. Like, if I try to go for like an early green swap and rush after that, hit a white swap, I really think, okay, well, I can't do anything that takes time. I've just gotta go.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that's a good habit to make, and I think that it's just an important thing in general for spies is to develop reactions they don't even think about. They just train themselves to do them, because if you spend too much time pondering, the games aren't long enough for you to really deliberate about what you're going to do next. And I think it's very true, and correct me if I'm wrong, my etiquette is not the best, but rejects happen quicker than drink takes. Like they happen earlier, like with just like into the time.
I don't think so.
They don't?
I think the timing is generally going to be the same for either one. I think it's just easier to notice a very quick reject. Because you're looking for rejects. You're looking for like, okay, is this person going to be in that purloin chain? So if they take a drink quickly, it's like, okay, they've taken a drink. There's no purloin, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it might be a bit of confirmation bias there, but I don't have the actual stats on me, in terms of like I haven't done any research into this specific issue.
Gotcha.
So I guess I very well could be wrong. It just doesn't seem to me like there is a difference.
Yeah, and it's also totally possible what Monitors is saying is that I'm intuitively talking about the end of the thing, and if you take a drink, you're holding Toby there for another couple seconds. Yeah, as opposed to rejecting. So where the time to start the animation is really whether it's a reject or a take is the only important part, and that might be consistent.
I do want to talk about a little bit more broadly about some of the stuff I've just mentioned, like not giving the sniper time to think about your narrow down this party.
Right.
And I think that that's something a lot of people don't do enough. Obviously you don't want to be having very quick games every game. Personally, my spy is probably too fast.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me a little bit more predictable. Makes me do things that are riskier than maybe I should be doing. But playing games in which you unseat the sniper from their comfort, because I mentioned this earlier actually. As the sniper, you want to be comfortable. You want to have control over the party. You want to know who your suspects are. You want to have some time to get down to the final few and shoot the spy. You want to have that time. If you don't have that time, you just have a lot more pressure on you, and they're a lot less likely to be correctly shooting the spy if you're catching things at the same level as you are in a slower game. Like if you're just catching a white swap and shooting them, then it's not a big deal. You've controlled the party correctly and you've got them, right? But if it's a green swap and you're not exactly sure who was at that statue before, but you've got some highlights for it, you start narrowing it down. If you have the time to do that and to start evaluating the party, and and that's the way you've caught it, which happens in a lot of games. Like in a lot of games, you'll see someone who highlights for statues in particular narrow it down to their highlights because they don't remember who was at a specific statue.
And the red.
But if the spy green swaps and then just does their missions and finishes with that kind of hardtail, they don't have that. The sniper doesn't have that time, and it's just about making the sniper uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
In my estimation, and that's both for completing your missions and for getting civilian shot.
Right. Yeah, no, because if you are making the sniper uncomfortable, they'll focus in more on specific things that you are. So the obvious counterpoint to the making sniper uncomfortable is don't make the sniper uncomfortable and then go rush and do something really obvious and make them shoot you now that they're jumpy. But if you're aware of the fact that you made the sniper uncomfortable, it's great. All right, so let's go ahead and see what happens after we go ahead and ditch. So I'm going to start at 136, starting in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so we bail out of here.
Yes, we do, and we do a quick bail. We're kind of in this useless conversation now, and this is like the exact opposite of what I would have preferred. And even look at this, we have the double agent take our drink, and that is the risk of doing a purloin with not many other people around. You can kind of control where Toby's going to go next if you know how his AI functions and you know how that you want that to go.
I'm pausing because I want to talk about that because this is for me now. I want to talk about that because I don't think about that nearly enough. So when we say about how the AI works, we're talking about you're going to have much better information on the exact numbers. Toby doesn't offer to the same person except after a certain time frame. Is it like 30 seconds, 45 seconds?
The rule I've always followed is like I don't know if there's an actual exact timing for it. I think it might be after a certain amount of offers to different people.
Okay.
There might also be a timing thing, because like he's not going to offer to anyone who's been offered within like the last 2 offers, right? So if you see someone get offered, then one more person, then they get offered again, that's a request, right? He's obviously not going to be offering anyone who already has a drink or something in their hands. He's not going to be offering anyone who he can't get behind. And he's going to be offering the closest person that's valid with these rules. Right. So, one of my favorite frame plays to do on Ballroom, and it's not even just a frame play. It's obviously you can also complete missions using it, and that's probably some of the strongest frames where you are actually completing while you're framing someone else. Is to just find an AI who's gone to center statues, give him contact, get next to him, call Toby over, and try to green purloin, and have my frame target take the list. Right, as long as they don't have a drink, as long as they haven't been offered recently, if I'm right next to him, Toby's probably gonna go there.
Right, and that definitely takes a lot of attention and just awareness of the party. But something that I think that I just kind of want to put out there as an idea for people is, depending on the map, because sometimes actually this works better on other maps. I'm really thinking about Pana or Library. Jeez, I need to stop calling things by their ancient 6-year-old names. If you have just exhausted one of the small conversation circles on the outer edge, and Toby's gonna offer to you, and then he's gonna go find a different part of the map. If you're able to get a green purloin that, it's gonna be a while before that actually is set off. Now, obviously, you could be noticed for the chain and whatnot, but just because there's just like this disconnect in time between Toby's next offer, there's more opportunity for the sniper to not notice it, and honestly more time for you to go do something else when the next time the tray is down.
Yeah, and I think that part of why I love Ballroom so much is that we just put ourselves into an interesting spot by doing the contact into Purloin, and we had an opportunity to just really finish missions quickly and have that missions done in pretty dynamic fashion. Like, you don't really see Purloin fingerprint and a very quick flirt done off of on many other venues. It's just, there's a lot more options. I feel like as Spy, you can bug. The inspects are fairly strong, and I actually want to talk about inspect strength, because I have a lot of thoughts on inspects.
Yes.
And most people who have talked to me about this before know I'm not really a fan of inspects most of the time, and the reason for that is that it's just a mission you're giving to the sniper. You're telling the sniper, hey, look at me, I'm completing missions,
Right.
And you're always going to pick up that suspicion for it. But the strength of inspects to me, for that reason, has always been how often are AIs going to actually complete inspects on this venue, and like, because it's all about blending in with the people who have actually completed inspects. On Ballroom, it's not super high. It's not courtyard level, but it is a fairly high amount of inspect complete rates for AIs. So doing inspects is relatively strong in comparison to something like Gallery. Gallery is just abysmal to do inspects on. You really just don't want to do it, because you have to go to statues twice, no matter what. You have to go to 2 different sets of statues, and AIs just don't do that very often, especially because there's so many other things to go to on Gallery. Right. So you're just not going to see that as often from AIs on Gallery. So if you do it, you are sticking out big time, and you're making yourself a threat. And that is why inspects to me always depends on how easily AIs are going to complete them.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And also something where, and we also talk about, depending on how attractive inspects are as an option, leaving inspects on the table and doing other things to end as a highlight, but make them hopefully miscount your threat, while you did something else with the inspects, like pick up a fingerprint or something.
Right. And so the thing about inspects is that as I mentioned, they're always going to be counting it. Once you do them, you've got them, and the sniper knows, pretty much regardless. Like, sometimes there are very like edge cases where the sniper just kind of blanks and doesn't notice you at statues. That's like really not going to happen very often, though. Although I will mention, because we're on Ballroom, that a favorite play of mine, if I'm playing like a short character like Smallman or something like that, is if the conversation in front of the back statues is like very, very full, sometimes you can get on that left statue and like get an inspect out without being seen. Like that is one of my favorite plays personally, just because like inspects usually is very, very tense to do because it's an impetus to get shot oftentimes, right?
Yeah.
You're just like a lot of snipers put a lot of credit on like, okay, someone's doing inspects, they're very suspicious. So
Yes. And another like brief thing is, like you were saying, you were telling people that you don't like to do inspects. I also don't like to do inspects, but I'm only saying that because I want, if there's any diamond players out there, to not have to for doing inspects.
you can't just give the game away immediately, Slappy.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I'm going to pick it up again at 110. We only have Seduce and Fingerprint left. They're just, by the way, I hadn't really noticed this. There just aren't highlights in this game.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, picking up at 110 in 3, 2, 1, playing it.
So at this point, we are down to a pretty big party, given the fact that that purloin is something that you would assume would stick out in the sniper's mind. So I think we've gotten away with this as about as clean as you can expect from that kind of purloin. The problem is now we're down to very little time. There's no fingerprint on this bookcase that we're going to. 2 AIs have been there since then. So there is no fingerprint here. We missed that opportunity, and now 40 seconds left, and we don't exactly know where a fingerprint can be found. Right? The briefcase just got picked up by an AI. We need to get one more flirt anyways. We've got this green book as one of our only suspects. So like, there's just not much that we can do. I think we're just gonna have to end up slamming this. But look at this. We are just getting so much attention, and like, we almost want to be shot already.
Right. Yeah. And looks like, oh yeah, we're gonna get shot at bookcase before the mission even goes off. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the one of the main points that we had to make a different decision, and so we made the correct decision. So I'm gonna go back to 105. There's probably forks in the road earlier than this, but we go in here, we try to flirt, and seduction target leaves. At the very moment that seduction target leaves, what's the best thing do you think we should do? Position ourselves for a fingerprint?
Well, it's just hard to say, right? Because your path to completion has kind of fallen to shambles in post purloin. You had a really clear one, right after the purloin happens. So you need something now. You need to find, well, obviously the last flirt, right? That's the first thing you need to find. But then you need to find another mission. Sometimes that's fingerprint, but now there's not many out there, and it feels like you'd probably be pretty obvious about it if you did do a fingerprint, because the ambassador is leaving a fingerprint on the ground there. It's just something that it's very much a missed opportunity type of thing, right? Because opportunities do not stay open in this game forever. Fingerprints get smudged. The party moves around, so the bug is not as good. Whatever. And that is why sometimes split-second decision-making to go finish your missions can be very, very impactful. And
Yes.
so now you're left in this lurch where you're thinking, okay, I've got a very little amount of time. The party's probably pretty narrowed down. It's just going to be a lot harder to get away with things. Because if the party were not narrowed down at all, let's say we didn't do purloin or contact and there's just no lowlights, right? In the end game, you actually have a lot more options in that case.
Right.
Because there are going to be AIs that are going to be near the ambassador. There are going to be AIs that are being offered by Toby. There are going to be probably AIs at statues that are all have to be watched for the finishing missions near the end. Now, obviously, if there's no contact, there's less pressure on the sniper to think that someone's finishing, and the purloin also serves the same function. But it really is about that thinning of the party at this point. So once you've already lost, so I think what I'm trying to put out here is, one, our opportunity to finish is gone, from compared to before, right? Our opportunity to finish is no longer there's no fingerprint on the bookcase. So if we tried for that, that's gone, right? But it's not just that the fingerprint's already gone; it's that the purloin has come off. Because if we do this fingerprint and this flirt while the purloin is still pending, that party is not yet all thinned out. There's a lot more for the sniper to be watching for.
Yeah.
So you've just got a lot more attention cover in that sense.
Yeah. So so one of the apparent kind of lessons is obviously book fingerprints are not likely to stay, especially after the change, but even before then. Book fingerprints don't cook as long as something like statue fingerprints, just because there's so many opportunities for them to get smudged. So even if we weren't really paying that much attention to where fingerprint is, basically we maybe should just kind of like purge it from our minds unless we've been really watching green and just kind of notice that, like, oh, no one's been there. Kind of like not even use it as a backup plan.
I feel like you have to be tracking print. Like, it's sometimes that's something that will slip your mind, but if you get one print, you need to be tracking the rest of them at the very least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially from going in there early on. So I also agree that what I like to do is try to make like handy little habits for people to do. So I think that Death Tacticus was going for the fingerprint, obviously. But also what I want to remove as a kind of like viable option for people is grabbing a book to waste time because you need to go somewhere before flirting or something like that. Late in the game is really hard because you're going to be taking up your hands and it's going to be taking a long time. Something like window, even just any window, just doing nothing, not even looking at your watch, obviously not adding time if it's too late, but just doing something else, any of the other pads, just because your options after Death Tacticus takes the book away from bookcase, all of a sudden the paths to finish are just constricted so greatly because we can't do inspects or swap. It's going to be, we have a little bit of constriction on the bug. Fingerprint is going to get taken up because we're not near it, and there's just so few things you can actually do. And actually it is important to me that your hands are taken up for bugs because it is so much easier to watch a bug if you know someone's arm is taken up, because you get to ignore an entire half of the body, and that really means something because when spies adjust their pathing before coming up on a bug, sometimes it's hard to tell whether or not sometimes they actually want the right side bug, or the, let's say, correct arm bug versus a wrong arm bug, because sometimes the other one's better. Like, wrong arms are not always best. Sometimes you actually want to bury the arm in.
Wait, especially on ballroom, interestingly enough. Ballroom has very good wrong arm bugs, but the sniper can really mitigate those by swooping all the way over to the side, and then suddenly wrong arms are just waiting at the sniper.
Exactly. And so removing that option for yourself. So not only have we cut ourselves off from statues, we've cut ourselves off from bug being as viable as we like, because if we want to path up to a bug, it has to be really natural, where there'd be that thing in our other arm, and the sniper doesn't have to worry about positioning as much. They only have to catch one side of the bug in order to do anything.
There's one more thing I want to talk about before I think we go on to the next game, is that at 20 seconds, like, we are being very, very clearly laser burned. Like, look at this. We've got laser right on our head the entire time, right? Mm-hmm. And this is something that you're going to notice. This is definitely, and at that point, what is your option? Because it feels like you're definitely in a very, very low % chance to win already. Mm-hmm. When you've gotten down to this point where you're just being laser burned at 20 seconds left, like, how, that's not going to win. You're pretty much never going to win that game. But how do you take this from like 0% to like maybe 1%? And I don't think that what we chose to do, go to this blue bookcase, is the thing. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. So as far as like the 1% thing, my immediate reaction to any lost cause is trying to dance. Unfortunately, we are Jackson, one of the easiest characters to shoot in the game. But the other thing I'd say is a lot of the times when we are getting laser burned, just because of people playing a lot of first-person shooters, that, and also Jackson is taller and the head sticks out, people aim at the head. Bug because sometimes they're actually not watching the rest of the body, and sometimes you can get away with garbage just down below. But then again, I'd probably bug and dance is honestly my one solution. A lot of people will try to like fake banana bread, and if you're getting laser burned, it's not going to help you pretty much. Like unless you're going to fake banana bread into, they'll take some momentary lowlights just because they're 99% not 100% sure. Fake banana bread is almost always worthless for you. And then the other thing, just set wise, is letting yourself time out. Like I don't do it nearly enough, and sometimes it actually is the best play for the rest of your set. So in an individual game, letting yourself time out if you're getting laser burned, it's not going to matter, right? You're losing that game. But making it a viable thing that can happen. So if you are getting laser burned, and the assumption is you're the kind of player that will always do something at the end, and you are reliably a player that will always do something at the end. I'm very guilty of this, where you think, okay, if this person is idling at the end of the game and they're not doing anything, I actually think it's not them, and I have to go worry and look around for another player, or look for the spy. You want that plausible deniability to exist in the situation of a match. If it's the last game of a match, bug and dance. But that's about all I got.
And I think that's a very, very interesting point. It's not always about the individual game, because at this point, your odds of winning this game are almost completely zero, obviously unless you get the bug and dance.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just going to be very, very difficult to ever win. So letting yourself time out, that is a very interesting point, I think, to have like flexibility in what the sniper has to expect, because it does maybe later on it gives you leeway on completing missions, for example.
Yeah. All right, and the last thing I want to do is I'm also just curious. We had a lot of lowlights and like very few highlights that game, so I know I tend to focus on spy in these. I'm just trying to figure out where all these lowlights come out. So the first set of lowlights come off of the banana bread. That's easy enough. And then the second wave, they come after the purloin, so it might just be narrowing down of party. And then there's basically no lowlights the rest of the game. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And then there's just not really highlighting after that. So actually, I don't have that much to add. I was just really curious because there's so little use of highlights in this particular game.
Yeah,
that's because
it looks
of
like
the early purloin, I think.
This is where statue highlights game, but all of the statue visitors got low lit.
Gotcha. Okay.
From the purloin or from the contact.
All right.
Like both Smallman and Duke and Rocker are like the only statue visitors, and then Cowboy was already out for contact. Like pretty much every statue visitor in this game was a low light, and that's not really what you want to see if you know someone's doing statue low light highlights, rather, because like that is a lot of like visual clutter that you're clearing up for them.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump into a Redwoods game if you still have time. I know that we've already eaten up an hour and a half.
Yeah, I can do one more for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, so back out to Redwoods. Okay, so... Oh my god. Okay.
Well...
Maybe... Let's see. So maybe we change our minds. Honestly, I'm kind of maybe feeling this Psycho Sloth DBK because it's also new modern. And I don't think I've done new modern in a Slowcast before.
Sure thing. Sounds good.
Okay, and for those that can't see my screen, because I actually hid it just so that the result is hidden, even though, again, it's not the important part, it were more Death Tacitus games. And thank you so much, Death Tacitus, for submitting games. I love it. I think it's really great. And no, please don't apologize. I love having a database, or not a database, a backlog of games, the people that have specifically given me permission to go and analyze their games, because I've had people, casters, analyze my games, and it's simultaneously kind of an infuriating but also humbling experience that I like to expose myself to more, because there'll be a bunch of times where casters will say something and they'll say, oh, this is the obvious choice, and I'll be like, no, there's obviously a better thing, and I know that it didn't work because of my stupid execution, blah blah blah, but I'm really defensive of my decision making. But it's actually really important to engage with that sort of second guessing of decision making. And also, obviously, when we're going over these, we tend to make really broad points. We tend not to focus in on, okay, what should this particular person do given the exact circumstances and like the other sniper's reputation and stuff like that. Really, they're more about broad lessons. So anyways, just wanted to say, appreciate all the replays. Don't apologize. let's jump into Psycho Sloth versus DBK Meds on Modern.
All right.
All right,
3,
so let me.
2.
Now I gotta put up the
Mine?
scoreboard.
Oh my God, scoreboard.
Yeah. Oh, I actually need to change it real quick. That's the other thing about this is changing it all the times. So we have Psycho Sloth. Cool. Psycho Sloth was in last one, so I can use the autocomplete. Versus DBK. Awesome. They were both in SCL 5, so I don't have to change anything on Kletos' thing because they're in the old database that I have yet to update. So awesome. And who are we? We are Papa Danger.
Indeed.
All right, let me put you up.
Or Morgan or Kane. Quite a few names on this one.
All right. All right. 4:15, 4:15, 4:15. Need to remember the new times of the changed maps because I keep thinking there's a time ad at 15 seconds in. So 4:15 seconds on the clock, starting in 3, 2, 1, playing it.
Yeah. All right. So Modern 4 of 8 is a very interesting change from last season where we had Modern 5 of 8. Modern 5 of 8, for those of you who don't know, was the most sniper biased venue in the game. And there are a few reasons for that. One, it's a 5 of 8, and 5 of 8s tend to be more sniper biased. Just because of the nature of the spy, you need to do 5 missions. It's a lot of missions to do. The sniper has a lot of control over the party, and has less reason to be shooting AIs critically. As well as the fact that Modern is very, very wide open from pretty much any angle in the venue. You can see anything on screen. You know, sometimes you won't be able to see specific animations if you're at a certain angle, but you can like see generally where people are at all times. So it's a lot harder for the spy to be hiding behind things or getting away with things that are just out of sight. So so that kind of thing is definitely very, very hard to do. But on 4 of 8 Modern, the parity has become a lot more even. The sniper has not dominated as hard, and I think that part of that is because Modern is a bar map.
Right. And so speaking of bar map, I'm actually going to pause at 3 minutes and just talk broadly about how do we feel about 2 different things. One, let's start with the sniper. Highlights for bar purloin that we have to kind of nurture because we have to remember to take them back down. Otherwise, we're going to end up with way too many. Modern 4 of 8, how do we feel about bar highlights?
So, okay. So with bar highlights, it's another highlight strategy that is an offloading of memory, right? It's very similar to statue inspects in that regard. However, it's not a permanent thing. As you mentioned, you do have to bring them back down later on to not end up with just a mess of highlights that are there for pretty much no reason, that they just took a drink, they've been in the conversation for a while doing nothing, and then they're not suspicious nor threatening at all, and they're still a highlight. So you do have to, be able to have that taken down. And I think that a lot of players who do not statue highlights, bar highlights, are pretty much only doing them when there's like a bar rush near the early part of the game, right? When there's just a lot of people to pay attention to at the bar, and you want to free up your attention to be watching other things in the party while that happens.
Gotcha. So it's like a contextual play where it's just the spy might see that bar rush, try to join in on them, and that's a way for you to manage that problem that's basically occurred.
Yeah. Okay. And I think on 4 of 8 Modern, bar highlights are significantly more effective, mostly because it's much more important on 4 of 8 Modern to know where a purloin came from. Mm-hmm. On 5 of 8 Modern, if you just memorize the bar without highlighting, or if you do highlight the bar anyways, if you like no matter what you did with purloin, as long as you knew who was a potential delegator, if you got an early purloin, you narrowed the party down on a 5 of 8 venue that's very open to like 8 people maximum. Right, and that is a death knell to the spy. Like I always said on 5 of 8 Modern, which my sniper win rate in SCL on is very, very good. It's in fact 100%. I believe I've only lost 5 of 8 Modern once competitively. And so like, and this is not bragging. Modern is already like 70% on overall on 5 of 8. Right? It's just something that's going to happen at low sample sizes. That I managed to get to 100% on it. Mm-hmm. But it was always the thing for me, like, you memorize bar, and if they do a purloin, you've won the game, right? Even if it's a
Right.
bar rush, even if there are like 7 or 8 people, if they purloin, the game's already over because they need 4 more missions in a party narrowed down to 8 people out of like 17 suspects, right? There are 17 suspects in the game. They've just narrowed it down to under half, and they still need 4 missions on a venue that's very hard to get missions by on.
Right.
So on 4 of 8, it is, however, much more important to know where the purloin comes from, and this is because obviously there's one less mission to do, which means if you don't know where the purloin comes from, narrowing it down to 8 people can actually not give you that win automatically.
Right.
You know, an AI could get contact and go to statues twice, and suddenly you're compelled to maybe shoot them if they're in the purloin chain. So having those highlights to give you a visual indicator of where people are and where they've gone with their drink is a lot more important. So making that decision, I think, is a lot more interesting on Forfeit.
Yeah, and a latent concept in the thing you're talking about is not only is there an additional mission with A5 of 8, but just the general, referring to your article about the strength of missions, the marginal mission is bigger. That 5th mission is larger from the change. 4 to 5 is a bigger change from 3 to 4, for example. I'll actually take that back because there's other things at play in that one. But the actual additional mission is very important because it'll probably be something like a hardtail. Now, that's not always necessarily the case, but because Modern had that thing where as soon as you got your hooks into someone in Modern, they were dead. You had to distract them. There had to be something weird going on because if they had an indication of narrowing down or getting a good amount of suspicion on people on Modern, you were done, which is why a lot of the only successful really spy plays that came out of Modern for a long time were frames for A5 of 8 for a while. But anyways, without getting too much into old Modern, definitely agree where it matters more to see where you're coming from, and that's actually something that's really different about bar highlights and inspect highlights. Because with inspect highlights, something that I like about inspect highlights is that you can backtrack the swap if it happens. The chance of a swap happening versus the chance of a purloin happening on Modern, I don't actually have the data on this. I'm sure that Morning Track or Calvin Schoolage would have the data on this. I want to say it's like double at least. I don't actually know if that's true, but I just feel like there's going to be like twice as many purloins on Modern as swaps. So the marginal benefit of seeing that. Oh, awesome. Yes. Find that, and if I'm just wrong, then I will apologize. Probably actually won't apologize, but I'll shame spies for not doing it. But just because it's that much more likely for the highlight of noticing where the talk comes from rather than knowing the highlight of the pool to backtrack people on for swap. Because the other thing is when you see someone going into statues to swap and it's a highlight already, it does. I'm not sure if it matters that much. If I see a highlight going to statues again after I'm already highlighting for statues, I'm worried about inspect swap as a finisher.
Yeah, it is. Purloin is significantly more common. In Season 6, which I limited to get only 4 of 8 Modern, there are 71 purloins and 10 swaps.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that's obviously a hugely significant difference. So even if you saw inspect highlights or bar highlights as roughly equivalent.
Apologies, actually. I accidentally kept purloin into my second thing. So purloin is, so that's with purloin and swap. I only want just swap, please.
Hey, props to the people that did purloin and swap.
36 swaps.
Okay.
So 36 or 71.
So 31. So about 2 times. The additional knowledge of the secondary effect is much greater in purloin. Now, obviously, you have to trade that off with the fact that when you do inspect highlights, you're also tracking the inspects. But also, because of the change to A4 of 8, there's less people to track. We dropped it down to what, like 16?
It's 20 guests.
20 people? Oh, 20 people? Oh, it still feels so barren because Modern is so big. So there's still a ton of people to track, but it just feels not that hard to track inspects. So something like using this as a tool to offload your memory seems really effective. Now, you really have to have a good conversation with yourself about whether or not you are going to be able to knock people back down at the correct timing to send the purloin. So the purloin window, importantly, is about 10 to 15 seconds shorter than what it actually is timed out to be, because they have to get to the bar. There has to be no other people there, otherwise it's going to get delayed even more. So it's really not that long that they're going to be in that threat window. But you have to be kind of still devoting mental resources to knocking that person down. But you're right that in A4 of 8, it's a really attractive option as opposed to A5 of 8, where you don't even really need to do it.
Well, on A5 of 8, it is still very, very attractive, because obviously if you know who's in the purloin chain, you don't even have to pay attention to where they came from, and you just need to remember who was there. So it's still a very attractive option in A5 of 8, but I think it's a bit more critical compared to not just memorizing.
Right. Okay. Well, we didn't actually end up purloining anyways, but I just wanted to talk about that because it's an interesting... There's going to be a lot of snipers that are tackling Modare and A4 of 8 for the first time, and if they're having troubles with purloin, obviously this might be something that's worthwhile for them, but then again, they're really going to have to practice knocking lights back down. So I'm going to start again from 3 minutes, starting in 3, 2, 1, playing it.
And I'd like to talk a little bit about light flexibility, because
Sure.
I value light flexibility very, very highly in my sniper play. And when you... So there, it's another reason I sort of dislike rote things on lights, because and obviously it's not for everyone, right? But I really value light flexibility, and there's a lot of upside to being able to swap your light just on someone who made you suspicious or did something that you think might have been a tell, like etiquette tells, for example. Did a bad briefcase? Highlight them. You can do it. And there's just value in being able to swap your lights around, and I actually think it's very significant in terms of how you think as a sniper too. It's not just about your lights; it's about how you're evaluating the game in terms of flexibility. Because I mentioned before that you really want sniper to be a control game. You want to know how it's going to go from the very start, but we all know that snipers lose sometimes. You're not gonna be able to be that perfect sniper every single time who has that control. So optimally, you want to be able to play with that control and not be upset in that control. But if you can't, you need to be able to recover and be a bit more flexible about how you play your sniper.
Indeed. Yes, totally agree. And light flexibility is also something where it's if you are brand new to the game, just getting the mental kind of like association to lights is important at first, but then don't get stuck in it too long. It's definitely a thing that I got stuck in for way too long. Still am stuck in a lot of ways where lights are too meaningful of a particular style where I can barely see what the other possibilities with lights are.
So what's interesting here is we just did a fake contact. There were only like 3 people who had real contact in that scenario. And this is what I'm talking about, wanting the sniper to have flexible lights, right? I want, when I see 4 people on Modern having real and that's it, I want to be able to just switch over my lights, track them.
Right.
And know, okay, they're the ones with contact, they're the ones who are actually threatening me right now. Because finishing without contact, but still doing a fake is not very common, actually. If you do a fake, you're pretty much, and you actually want to finish, you're pretty likely to do a real, in my estimation, later on. And I think we might be seeing this pretty soon here. We'll see Psychosloth pick up a real contact right about now. Yeah, here it is. Here comes the white double agent. And so...
Banana bread.
I want to pause here and just... This is another thing about contact as a mission that you can really dig into, I feel like. You've just seen 4 people have real on Modern, right? And that is pretty significant when that second contact comes off, because you think, okay, these people presumably already had real, or had an unlucky fake, or they luckily had the real. But if they had an unlucky fake, then that requires that the real double agent having been out of conversation, because there was no other double agent in conversation. So they had to have known the real double agent was not in conversation, which means it's a little bit more of a risky play for the spy and not something they're likely to take. Because at Spy, if you're faking, you really want to be more sure about, not having a SDA in your conversation or having a DA in the other conversations to pick up suspects and other people. So this second contact here suddenly makes a lot of gives less suspicion to like Smallman, who I believe had real contact on the first one, or Alice, who had real contact on the first one, and tends to heighten suspicion on people who did not have contact in the first contact, right?
Right.
So you might want to like drop Alice and Smallman, who had real on the first one, to a neutral light, and then light everyone else who's in for the second one, for example. And like that kind of just the fact that you're aware of who was real and for real the first time opens up so many possibilities on how you can evaluate this next contact, I feel like.
Yes. And that is an attractive option for people that have more processing power than I do. Because when I hear that, I'm like, I don't have the mental capacity to really draw on all of that. But I love hearing from people that do, that they can use that flexibility.
That's the point of the flexible highlights, right? That's the point of being able, like you don't have to have the mental capacity to memorize who had his real, right? You can just see, okay, I've switched my highlights to these people. These people are the ones who had real on the first one, but now there's the second one. I can look and see who's got real on the second one, and I can look and see who had real on the first one, and then I can make my evaluations from there.
Indeed. Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit through from 3 minutes on. We get the fingerprint. Not much to say there. We just went after Ambassador close enough that got it. But we do. Oh, actually, I do want to say one quick thing. I like that we added time at just about 3 minutes in, because we kind of weren't doing anything for a long time. When we identified the need for time early enough on that we added time in the middle of the game. Also, we were initially, actually, it might have even been a mistake time ad. Actually, now that I look at it, it might have been trying to be a flirt.
Where's the time that you're talking about?
At 3 minutes. Or just after 3 minutes, when we go chase, it looks like we might go for a flirt, and instead we time ad. could have been a mistake on a flirt.
I don't see a time ad on this timeline.
At 3 minutes. Oh, go back to the other 3 minutes. Go back to when he goes to Windows.
Oh,
with
I
text.
see it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the timeline looks weird like that sometimes, I suppose.
Right, exactly, because you go back to the first 3 minutes and there's nothing there. So I do notice that we have, let's see, I want to see when the very next thing. So we pick up a fingerprint at 2:32 after adding time. So we only have 51% of flirt for the first 2+ minutes, basically. And so I want to talk about like early pacing in that. I do like that we identified that we were going to have pacing issues early enough on, that we added time. But when we are at a position where we've wasted that much time and we haven't gotten all that much for it, we actually have to do some things to make it happen. Although still 2.5 minutes left and it's a 4 of 8. Don't want to harp on it too much because it's not too much of an issue by that point. But just noticing your own pacing at that point, why there's going to be this time crunch later on in the game. Because after that, we also we fake banana bread, which is another time sink in a sort of way, that we don't actually pick up anything beyond that fingerprint until we go inspect with 1 minute left.
Yeah. And so we've got this minute left here, right? And it's very, we really need some progress. We go across from our ST and we actually hit a green test on it. If we had been next to them, that would have been a completion of our flirt.
Yeah.
And that's something that if you had that 51%, you really want to give yourself a chance to 2 flirt, in my opinion. It's just kind of something you want to do. So after that, we're really needing to find some mission progress very quickly. And I feel like there's no way we complete a Softail game with 40 seconds left with 1 flirt, and inspect, and a fingerprint left to do, unless there's like a fingerprintable statue somewhere.
Right.
That's the only way you complete, all of those missions within 40 seconds. So what we do here is actually very interesting. We go for a fingerprint on bar. We actually miss the fingerprint on bar, so we're in a little bit of a rough spot. but we go for a very like a late bug here, and what's good about this bug is we're not a highlight. We're not a highlight. 10 seconds left in the game. There are other people, the snipers watching, and we actually get away with it. It's not actually the prettiest bug. It is kind of just a crash bug while we curve into conversation to get our last flirt. But it does serve a fairly good purpose here. We get into our last flirt, we get the bug, and then we have the option to go for this briefcase really quickly. And if we were a suspect at all before any of this happened, we would be dead for doing this. This is extremely quick movement at the end of the game. But the good thing is, we're not. The sniper is not doing inspect highlights, so we're not a highlight for that. Even though we didn't ever complete inspects, that would have been a shame, I think, to lose because you're a highlight for inspects you never completed.
Right.
But so we're not a highlight for that. So we get away with a lot right at the end of the game here, because critically, there are a few people who are doing things that could be getting missions done, right? You've got Buns at statues over here. You've got Duke at bar getting a drink, who's a highlight. You have Cowboy, who's a highlight, walking past the ambassador in a bug-like fashion. And so when there's that many things going on at the same time, especially near the end of the game, where the sniper has to be very, very careful about who could be winning the game, right? Who could be completing their missions. When there's that much stuff going on, it's a lot easier to get away with this kind of it honestly kind of sloppy late game rush. But the fact that we're not a suspect yet in this game is what facilitates that.
Yes, indeed. And so knowing the kind of options that you had, so this is kind of the opposite of what we talked about, where we were getting laser burned at the end of Ballroom and there was basically nothing we could do. And in this case, because we had spent so much of the game idling, it kind of put us into the position where we actually had more options at the end to just do crazy stuff. I mean, the party did have to cooperate slightly, but that's just going to happen a lot of the time. And you put yourself in a position that you could salvage a win from what otherwise was going to be a really tough position. Because also we're a little bit lucky that do we stand close enough to Ambassador to force out? No, Ambassador left on their own volition.
Yeah, Ambassador left on their own. That's there is definitely an element of luck to completing these missions, as well as they did. It's not super clean, but it is effective. And so I think, well, one, the ability to see the line to win, right? Mm-hmm. They went for the bar fingerprint. That's definitely one thing you can do. Like that is a thing, right? There's Ambassador nearby. If you hit the fingerprint, you can go bug the Ambassador, finish up your flirt, and that's a pretty clean win without even having to have the Ambassador leave for you.
Right.
So being able to determine what you need to do to win in the end game here is what is like you don't win otherwise, right? Yeah. And this is the counterpoint to timing out sometimes. Mm-hmm. Right? Sometimes you just want to go for it, and maybe the sniper's not onto you, especially if you haven't been doing much the entire game. Late game rushes, especially if you see that other characters are doing things, is very important in terms of getting away with spy victories. Mm-hmm. But there's also the fact that, and this comes back to actually what we were talking about in the Tacticus game, I think, in that this party was not very narrowed down. There are 4 lowlights, and even one of them gets shot.
Right.
There are 4 lowlights in this game, and multiple highlights that we're not a part of. Mm-hmm. And because the sniper just does not have that kind of party narrowing down, the threat of all these people is still active. If these characters were all were even half of them were lowlights, that's just that much more attention freed up for DBDK Maz to be watching us.
Right. And that's also just a generally good point about games where you haven't done anything with a flag on them, is that the sniper is going to be really paranoid in the last seconds because they know that's when the spy starts getting desperate. And when the spy starts getting desperate, you have to plausibly look at things like statues swapping, which normally you wouldn't want to do on A4FA, or just going shelf to shelf, right? These crazy things that normally they would never be willing to do, but because you just imagine all of these people that could be in desperate situations, right at the end, you hire this super high tension. And just, it is a good thing where we were able to see a line to win. So, because we put ourselves in a tough position in a sort of a way, right? We went to bar, and we really, really were relying on that fingerprint, because otherwise we had to do 3 missions in 14 seconds, that's just hard. If we hit even if we do hit the difficult fingerprint, we still have to do 2 missions in the last 10 seconds, but that's not as bad. So we put ourselves in a position where we are kind of like awkwardly having to do a reach for 3 partial completions all at the same time. But you're also right, where we're able to put ourselves in a position where we actually could get that done. And I don't know if Psychosloth is the kind of player that finds themselves in this position a lot, but that is, if I have any strengths, that is my strength, is I can see a line at the end of the game where I'm in a horrible position, but I can at least cobble together a plausible finish where I at least get the countdown timer going. I mean, I might not win, but the countdown timer is going.
I mean, you have so much experience putting yourself in horrible positions at the end of the game.
Oh, it's cool, because this actually reminds me of a game I won versus Pwn Noob last season, where I had it was A5 of 8 Modern, and I had to do 4 missions the last 20 seconds. It was great, because it was this sloppy stuff that normally you would never be able to get away with, but because the sniper is on such high alert for every other location on the map, just because they're awaiting something, it's great.
Cletus makes a good point in that you can pick up Purloin option and delegate to have the extra lifeline if you miss the fingerprint. I don't think we did that.
That's true.
We did take out the delegate option, actually. I just don't think we used it.
Right.
We didn't need to once the ambassador walked away. I think that might have been the plan if the ambassador didn't walk away. So we did have that in our back pocket, and I think that makes us a little bit more reasonable as far as not being as much luck based goes.
Right. It did. We did play, or we did cut it pretty close, where I might have liked sending the delegate just so that we had enough time to finish the fingerprint.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Send the delegate, pick up the briefcase, and then finish fingerprint before they take the list during the hang.
Right, exactly. But I mean, obviously that puts us. I mean, the way that Psychosloth did do it was perfect, where we didn't even need it, and it was just going to be another. It would have just drawn us slightly more attention than we would have wanted anyway. So we did actually time it out well. But you're right that. If we were unsure if we'd be able to pick up the briefcase in time and complete the timer on the fingerprint, because we cut it really close, having the delegate out there just as a way to have the pseudo time ad.
Fingerprint of ambassador 0.1 seconds.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right, well, quite a game to end on. Also just interesting that I've definitely been in this situation before where we shot one of 3 lowlights because we have no idea what's happening. We just have to shoot someone. Okay. All right. Well, I think that does it for us. Is there any other
right
soapbox?
Your game prediction, by the way.
Yeah, I know, man. It takes forever, but it's so worth it. It's lovely. Do you have anything you want to either finalize, any thoughts that you have lingering, or anything to plug? I don't really know.
I'm not sure I do. I think that really it's just about learning, both in theory and in practice, how you're going to play the game. There's so many different ways you can do it, and there's so many right answers is what makes SpyParty so interesting to me. And it's I think to that end, the thing I want to say most about SpyParty is you don't just play it and just do the same things. Don't fall into patterns necessarily. You want to be trying things out, trying to play in different ways, experimenting and figuring out what is the best and what works, right? And especially on SpySide, I know because we've been focusing on SpySide a lot, right? And so as long as you're not falling into really these heavy patterns, pretty much any spy play is going to it can be very effective.
Right. And it's interesting because I'm really heavily invested in trying to develop habits. But one of the habits you have to develop is plausibly having multiple play styles as spy, so that you can at least rely on sort of like the mental memory of like, okay, I've done this before, I know what the timing is like, and I can just kind of like let that other part take over while I kind of consider the other things I can do. Because like we saw in the last like 14 seconds of this game, there was a lot of knowledge there that was completely like reflexive at that point. There's no way that Psycho Sloth really had time to sit down and think about what their next move was. They just had enough practice in the game to put something together. Even if it wasn't pretty, it was something, and it took game knowledge. Because a lot of people just time out there. They'll do something like they'll bug, but they have 2 more missions to do, but it's just kind of like the obvious last thing you do is the desperation bug, because it'll be so many times you have 1 mission left to do, but having the composure to do 3 in the last bit, that comes from practice.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope to do more of these. If this was useful at all for any of the people that got casted, please send more files my way. I love doing these. I just think it's so fun. And to Opie's point before, this game is so interesting and deep that like I've done probably like half a dozen to a dozen of these slowcasts where I just talk about the game slowly for a couple hours, and I have not even gotten close to running out of things to say.
Yeah, for sure. Like some of my favorite moments from like PAX, for example, me and Slappy met at PAX, is like just our conversations about the game. Like,
yes,
talking to you about the game is like really so interesting, because I know that you think very deeply about it, and it gives me a lot of insight.
And someday I will translate all that thought into play, but it's not right now. But someday, hopefully it'll actually do something. But I do just love thinking about it. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that joined us. And I believe we'll be back with a stream on Saturday. We still doing the Saturday, Sunday streams for SEL?
Yeah.
Very cool.
I heard nothing about saying out of those.
Awesome. Yeah, and for people that maybe are just like randomly stumbling across this super high level thing, normally we don't go this in depth. Normally it's much more accessible than that. And I think actually we are working on streams that are going to be specifically geared towards newer players. But also, if you're someone who's just stumbled into this, just know how deep of a game this is. And even if this sounds like total gibberish and jargon, know that it's meaningful gibberish and jargon, and that you too could understand it someday. And with that, I think I'll call it.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching.
We gonna take this slow. We just gonna peel it back layer